sorry, I'm late. The ring
Don't
about the
worry.
traffic. Yeah. So welcome to my talk. Today I'm going to talk to you about listening to Korean music. And I came here in the beginning in 1992 on a scholarship from the 국악원. It's the National Classical Music. What that time it was called the National Classical Music Institute. Now it's called the National 국악 Center. They're trying to make it 국악 into English. So now you have to all know what it means. And I came to study Kayagum on a scholarship, but I'd come originally from Japan and then through China, so I'd studied the instruments of those two countries before I came to Korea. And when I first heard, I came because of the shape of the instrument and not because of the sound of the instrument. So I was interested in comparing the different instruments from East Asia to each other. I was an East Asian Studies major as an undergraduate, so I was interested in sort of comparative musicology kind of topics. And when I first got here, I couldn't understand the sound of the kayagum. Compared to the koto, compared to the mujang, it was very not as bright and not as easy to understand it from someone who has a Western musical background. So I wanted to share with you sort of my journey into coming to love Korean music and strategies for those of you who have trouble listening to Korean music, ways to listen to it sort of in a technical way that can help you understand the rhythm, understand the modes, and understand the music that's going on. So with that, that's where I'm from Juneau, Alaska. Actually, there's some other friend here from Juneau, Alaska today that came to the talk. So this is, Juneau is Southeast Alaska. It's very close to Korea. There used to be a flight going from Alaska. There is no more. So now it takes a long time to get there. This is my hometown, Juneau, Alaska. And you can only get there by boat or airplane. There's no roads. So how did I get into playing kayagum? I was introduced to kayagum family, the Zulu family in East Asia, through the Japanese music. I'd gone to school at a school that was famous for ethnomusicology, and they were just starting a koto program at our school. So I started playing the koto, Japanese kayagum, when I was 17 years old. And this is my teacher, the person who put it all together. This is her husband, Tai Tadao, and he's a composer. She's a contemporary music. She does a lot of jazz, and her husband passed away many years ago already, so she's the head of the school now. And her dream was, because in Japan, and the same is true in Korea to some extent, because Japanese traditional music was dying in Japan, she was trying to come up with strategies to make Japanese young people love Japanese music. And so their strategy was to send teachers, send instruments all over the world, get foreigners to play the instrument, get interested in it, bring the foreigners back to Japan, have them tour around Japan playing this Japanese traditional instrument for Japanese students who should then fall in love with it because the foreign kids are doing it. So this was her dream. I got pulled into her dream. And she's what she taught us was contemporary music. So we played her husband's compositions, mostly in ensemble, and only later moving on to some more traditional kind of music. After 2 years studying Japanese koto, I ended up in the Chinese studies program at the school. So I was interested in. I got to go with the exchange program to China. And so I wrote with a piece of paper that said the Chinese name for this instrument of Wuzheng. At Wesleyan, when I was studying, I had been studying with a very famous Guqin player. I'm going to introduce all these instruments to you today, with 7 strings in there. He wrote it down for me. He said, you should go play this instrument in China. I said, oh, you have it in China too. I was very young. And I studied with Wang Changyuan. She's also a composer, writing new music for the guzheng. So both my introduction to 가야금, to koto and guzheng was through composers and through contemporary music for these instruments. Came back, kept studying with her in New York, and then got a scholarship to come to Korea. So I came to Korea and came across the 가야금, and now I'm going to tell you about that story. But eventually I made an ensemble, the 가야금, koto, guzheng, and Korean percussion, a contemporary music ensemble. We perform sporadically because we're quite expensive to put together. So everybody lives in a different country and is transplanted in this group. Alright, so I want to talk to you first about the history of the 가야금, which is the same as the early history. It belongs to also the guzheng and the koto. And then I want to talk to you about the music of the 가야금. Then we're going to do performance and we can have question and answer. Alright. So if we look at the oldest kind of stringed instrument in China, we think about a hunting bow. So we just have one string and a bow and it makes kind of sound on it. A little bit like playing the rubber bands if you did that as a kid. And then the next instrument that was going to be developed was the gongho. And gongho, as you can see, looks like this. We still have it in all of East Asia, but it's not played. The Chinese have developed a new gongho that they are playing, but it's not really played in Japan or in Korea very much. But you can see it's a very simple harp-like instrument. And at some point, they lay down the gongho. It's called the laying down gongho. And you can see it starts to look like the instrument we have today in East Asia, of the wool gongho. These are some old tomb carvings from a tomb. And you can see it also looks a little bit like the komungo, which I don't know if you've seen that here in Korea before. This is a reproduction, and actually komungo doesn't look like, the line komungo doesn't quite look like this. But anyway, it's a reproduction from today. The 가야금 that the guzheng, 가야금, koto, all came from this earlier instrument called the si. In Chinese it's 술 in Korean. 금술. Those of you studying Korean, you might know this saying that 금술 having to do with the harmony between husband and wife. And if you have a relationship like a 금 and a 술, then you're going to have a happy togetherness. So the 술. These pictures are from the tomb of the Maungde. There's a lot of old tombs in China where they've excavated instruments. The si had 25 strings and was played probably, we think, in the at least in its contemporaries, it's in Confucian Temple. There's a story about how the 가야금 came to Korea from this. So this is a Chinese story, it's not a Korean story. But the Chinese story is that, so the name of the zheng, or jeng in Korean, so 전쟁 할 때 jeng. Jeng means, if you think of 전쟁, it means strive or to fight, right? And it can also be an onomatopoeia, so it's a ding, 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 makes this kind of sound, ding, 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 ding. So there was two princesses in China, and they both wanted to play this at the same time, so they were fighting over it, and the instrument broke in half. One half with 12 strings and one half with 13 strings. Father was very angry at the two women for fighting, so he banished them. One with 12 strings went to Korea, the one with 13 strings came to Japan. This is the Chinese legend of the origin of the instrument. But you can see there's bridges on these instruments that are usually played in octaves. Very kind of simple playing to support orchestral kind of ritual music. The 가야금 came about as a commission by King Kashil. So the reason why it's called 가야금 is because it's from the country of Gaya, before the Three Kingdoms period. Three Kingdoms period, of course, is Shilla and Goryeo. So before Shilla annexed it, there was the country of Gaya, which is down in the south, right where the Jinju area, between Gyeongsando and Jeollam and Namdo. So the king of Kaya, commissioned the 가야금 based on the image of the 고전. And this guy named Uruk, he composed 12 pieces. And pretty soon the country of Kaya was annexed to Shilla. So the 가야금 went with Uruk to Shilla, and Uruk went and he presented it to the king of Shilla. Anyway, this is the modern Jung. These are just internet very stereotypical pictures of it. 고전. She's dressed like a Qing Dynasty style, but her 고전 is post-cultural revolution style 고전. It's not old style. There's another one. Right now, when I studied in China, was already 1990, so a long time ago. We used 3 picks. We sat on the chair, but lately they've been moving the instrument down to the lap, just like the 가야금. It's a new trend in China. In case she's also dressed in Qing Dynasty clothing, but she's playing a post-cultural revolution 고전. This 고전 was developed by Wang Changyuan, my teacher's father, before he was killed during the Cultural Revolution. So this 21-string developed in Shanghai. And this is actually an instrument from the factory that he worked with to design. Anyway, it's not usually played on the floor, although it's starting to be again. This is a very modern 고전. This is where everything's going in East Asia with the instruments. Okay, so back to Uruk and the king. So this was 6th century. Uruk went to see King Kashil, to the king of King Jinhung with his 가야금, and King Jinhung listened to the Kayanese music and said that they were elegant and improper and didn't like them at all. So the king gave his instruments to the pieces to his own composers from Shilla. These 3 musicians, Kyeogyo, Mandok, and Popji, and they rewrote all the pieces, and the king was pretty happy about them, so then he called them, instead of elegant and improper, they became Taeak, great music. And that's how we have the 가야금 handed down to us today, so it survived in Shilla. And when we look at how the 가야금 actually got to Japan in the form of the koto, we find that they don't call it the 가야금, but the shiragam, shiragi koto. If you go to Nara, to the Shosoi Museum, you can find the very first, one of the early imported from Shilla zithers there, and they call it shiragi koto. So that's shiragam in India, in Korean. So the one from in the Shosoi is from the Tang Dynasty, and also has 13 strings. The very first images we have of the 가야금 are probably from fertility rites. They're quite explicit in their depiction. If you go to the Gyeongju Museum, the National Museum in Gyeongju, you can see this lid of a pot, a tumor pot. This is National Treasure number 195, and it's also from this early time from the 5th and 6th century. Probably we think, you can see there's a pregnant lady playing, there's a snake going under the instrument, there's all sorts of happenings around on the other side that they don't usually show you in pictures or in the textbook, but you can go see it in person if you want. So there used to be 2 kinds of 가야금. Now there's many kinds of 가야금. But the 2 main kinds we think about is the Sando 가야금 and the 정악 가야금. The Sando 가야금 is what I'm going to be playing for you today. I'm also going to be playing Sando for you today. But the instrument that Uruk played and the one that went to Japan, those were both from this court style, the 정악 가야금. And if we look at the playing technique of the koto and the playing techniques of the 정악 가야금, we see they're very similar. And we also see a relationship between the Sando in Korean, Sando style of playing gojan. It's all connected to playing technique. The space between the strings is the same on the 가야금, the koto, and the the 정확 가야금 koto playing technique is the same. Once we get to Sanjo, the playing technique really changes along with the development of Sanjo itself, which I'm going to talk about later. Of course, today we also have, so this is 12, they're both 12 string. Then we have 15 string, 16 string, 17 string, 18 string, 20 string, and 25 string. And today the 25 string, it's not called a 가야금, it's called a 25현금, not 가야금. This is tuned like a harp, so it's quite actually becoming a different instrument than the 가야금 altogether. But it's very popular today. It's used in all sorts of new music, popular music, and orchestral music. So you can see at the very end there, I couldn't bring my own instrument today, but you can see there's horns there. And these are called a 양이두. 양이두. So much of the instrument is connected to different animals. So these are the ram's horns, brought by Uru. And the Sanjo 가야금 also has these ram's horns. But they're very small. So you can see they're sort of stuck. Little words always here at the end of the instrument. You can all come up afterwards and touch and show and tell if you want. 이제 해주세요. 진행해 주시겠어요? 이제 손을 들어갈 것 같아요. So what's interesting for me, I was learned that the guzheng and the koto were related to dragons. And when we find out about the 가야금, it's all related to birds. So we see on the instrument, you can see there on the front, there's the crane's knees, these wrapped strings here. The wrapped cord down here is the phoenix tail. Here are the bridges. They're not called bridges, but actually wild goose feet. So it looks like the foot of the wild goose. And we have on the back, everything's very kind of philosophical with the 가야금. We have the moon, the sun, and we have the universe. And if we look at the top of the instrument, we see that it's curved and round, so this is also the heaven. Back is the earth. And you have the player in between connecting the heaven and the earth. And a lot of instruments will have different crane motifs. There's also a lot of makers that use this double happiness. And I have to ask about that because I haven't figured out why. You know, in China and Japan, usually you use double happiness for husband and wife. So maybe it's I don't know. I have to ask them. Let's look at, and you can see here as well. There's a thing here. I just found out something 2 days ago about this. In China and Japan, they call it where the dragon tongue comes out. I saw something in a book yesterday, but I can't remember what it said. I'll have to tell you next time we meet to the box or listen about it. So you can see this is the goose feet. The number 3 is probably the closest one looking for wild goose feet. You can see here on the crane's knees, these are real crane's knees and our haksu. Can you imagine, these old guys back in the old days, right, before computers and all that, thinking, oh, what should we call our rap strings at the end? They kind of look like crane's knees, let's call them crane's knees. A very, very creative in a way, but also very in line with sort of other things they're thinking about philosophically and aesthetically in terms of the rest of Korean culture, including 한옥집 or the hanbok. So how many of you can read Korean? I wasn't sure it was going to be here. Usually I'm lecturing in Korean, so my materials tend to be in Korean side. So this is the character for flying, 피, 날다. And a lot of the imagery with Korean art is having to do with birds and the act of actually flying up to heaven. There's the egret flying, egret or a heron, into the blue mountains, right? 정산으로 들어간다. If you look at any Korean literature, any Korean music and Korean songs, you always find there's a 정산에 들어가다. 하루를 잃었다, 사로를 잃었다, 정산에 들어가다. 뭐 그런 말이 있어요. Here you can see when we play the 가야금 as well, our left hand should look like the wing of the crane. So that when we're doing the vibrato on the instrument, we should look like we're a flying bird. So you can see also the roof. Of course, in East Asia, there's this idea in Japan and China as well, but it comes off differently. China is quite more pointed than Korea, and Japan is on the other side. So Korea is right in the middle with this flying going up to heaven idea. This is a 살풀이 with the your hand, your burdens, fly them away. You have to pick them up again after they don't fly, but. So this is, the Yangban outfit. It's also this is the bird wings. So all the Yangban, the high class dances in Korea from the Yangban class, they're all a lot of crane dances, a lot of stuff about flying, and also making your outfit fly. So you can see we have all these sort of, ties. They can all fly, and when you move, they flutter in the wind. There's all sorts of poetry about this, all sorts of literature about it, and you can, all sorts of wing movements you can make with your clothing. As you probably know, instruments are not immune from class system, and Korea is a very class focused type of society. So this is imported from China actually, but the 7-string zither, the 진행합니다, or the komungo is considered a high class instrument in East Asia, whereas the 가야금 is considered the female yin-yang, umyang, so the sort of sing-song girl, the kiseng, it's very much associated with women. The male instrument, the scholar's instrument, is considered to be the komungo. Of course, today it's all mixed up. All the women are playing the komungo. Traditionally, so if we look at poetry, if we look at literature, komungo is related to the 7-string zither. I'm going to show you it in a second. But it's the instrument that Confucius himself played. So in the Joseon Dynasty period, everything got associated with Confucian and different ideas, at least in the literature, if not in actual society itself. Komungo is the one that you play by yourself while you think philosophical thoughts, and the gaya금 is for entertainment purposes. And as I said, the gaya금 is connected to the birds and phoenixes, whereas all the other instruments, zither instruments of East Asia, are connected to dragons. This is a picture of the chin, or the kum, 주량금, or 오현금. Usually if you find in Korean song, Korean poetry, it's usually depicted as 오현금, 5-string zither. And this is the one that Confucius played. But today it has 7 strings. So but you can see there's the dragon and the chin together. This is the koto. And you can see we've got the same sort of diagram depiction of the instrument, but we've got instead of the phoenix tail, we've got a dragon tail. We've got all sorts of dragon images here. Dragon head, dragon tongue comes out of there. This is the dragon horn holding the instruments up as the bridge, main bridge. And in the back, the dragon back. And out of the holes is not the sun and the moon, but the place where the dragon breath comes out of. Notice that the dragon breath comes out of a different place than the dragon tongue comes out of. These are just picks that we use in Japan to play. It's not important for this talk. So the Japanese koto, you can see it depicted here also as a dragon. This is pipa. I'm not sure what that animal that is, taking the dragon. These are pics of the gujang. Same thing on the gujang. Gujang is a little bit more mixed. Not in contemporary books, but if you look at old books, you can find this phoenix. Phoenix pond, phoenix eye, phoenix lake. And here we have a mix of the wild goose and the bridge. So it's a wild goose bridge here as support. But here we've got the dragon head again. These are the different bridges from the 3 different countries. So this is Koto Bridge, Gojeon Bridge and Gaya금 Bridge. This is what's going on in Japan right now. This is my teacher's son. He's making pink bridges, purple instruments. So this is like much like the we have this going on here too, but not as much. This is what a sort of traditional kopi looks like. In Japan, there's one more instrument that's related to the 가야금. It's called the wagon. Everything with wa in it is like 우리 in Korean. 우리 in Korean is a wa kofu. There's a wagon, so 우리나라의 금. And these come, the earliest depictions again are in clay figurines. Because it's a very small instrument. It's from the Kofun period, 3rd to 6th century. And it's a much smaller instrument, but it's still the idea of bridges and strings. And you can check out these bridges, they're very quite natural. And if you press on them much, I'm sure they're going to fall over. So imagine that the playing was very kind of straightforward, light. But this tail here is very quite reminiscent of the 가야금 tail. So I'm curious about that, but I haven't had a chance to look into it more. So here's the 가야금 tail, the wagon tail, and the totu tail. Here's dragon tail, here's phoenix tail, and I don't know what tail this is. to ask. This is the 7 strings that the Confucius played, the Chilhungo. So this is very sort of elite instrument. If you go to China, Taiwan, any sort of area in the Sinosphere, you find the people who want to come off as scholars are playing this instrument. It's a wonderful, beautiful instrument. This is Tang Dynasty depiction. Usually men are playing it, but very early depiction of the women also playing it in the Tang Dynasty. Here again, we have dragon pond and phoenix pool, it's all mixed together. Here's the goose feet that we have with the same name as we have on the Gaya금 bridges, but it's on the underside of the instrument, pushing the instrument out from the table. Dragon gums from her teeth, but you want to get a phoenix tongue instead of a dragon tongue there. Okay, I'm going to invite my colleague. So I want to talk about Chango now. We're going to have Chango as well today. And Chango has a kind of different history than that of the East Asian zithers. Chango is coming from me. So it came to, and we also call it the seiryogo, which means the slim-waisted, sort of the, slim-waisted instrument because of its thin waist. Of course, in English we think of it as the hourglass drum because it looks like an hourglass. Yeah. And the history of Chango belongs also to the Shilla period, same as the Gaya금, but instead of making a new instrument, it's really imported. The earliest depiction we have on the bell from the Shilla period. This is the original bell. You can see it's remade here. You can see that the Chango is quite small. And usually depicted by these pitan in Korean, the bodhisattvas are flying around in heaven, so you see them depicted in temples. Here from India, the yogo is called the idaka, I think. Idaka in India. This was introduced to China, through China to Korea from India during the Shilla period. We don't really have the date for that, but you can see this is the Indian drum. It's quite a bit smaller than what we have with the Chango. And this is just a remake exhibition that I found in Gwangju. So here's the original yogo, small yogo, big yogo, and the seyogo, Chango. This is the Chango. And then these bigger instruments, the Chango and Gayago. This is also another depiction from the Han Dynasty in China, wall carving. Senghwang, Sheng Chinese, and the Chango. For those of you who can read characters, it's not long drum, but it's the drum that's played with this stick, and not a long. I thought it was a long drum for the longest time because we don't use characters there very much. But if you look it up, you see it's Chang is in a stick to play the instrument with. And in Japan, we have the taiko. You can see they look similar, but they're quite a bit much smaller. Played on your shoulder like this. The earliest record we have of the Chango coming in to Korea as a Chango is from the Song Dynasty. this was interesting because the Mongols were sort of about to take over China, and the king, the emperor of China wanted to sort of make alliances with the Korean king, so he was trying to get Korea not to be allies with the Mongols, and gave all sorts of instruments that even today are disappeared in China that still exist here in Korea. So as part of that, in 1114, Emperor Huizong, he sent 20 tangos as part of his gift to Korea. It also included komogo, ajing. Ajing is yajing in Chinese. This is sort of died out in China, but we can still find it in Korea and as a developed and indigenized instrument. All right, so now I want to introduce my colleague and teacher, Jo Se-young. Jo Se-young is he comes from a family of musicians, and he's with me working in Daejeon. 올라갈게요, 아니면 we've been working together for about 2 years as a team, although we haven't worked together much this year. We've both been too busy. So what I want to do now is sort of move over to how things sound and how they play them, how to listen to 가야금. So what I wanted to do today is to introduce different modes and different rhythm patterns to you. I'm using a book that I think is interesting from the 18th century. It's called the Haedong Gayo. It's the Songs of the Eastern Sea. And this was written for kabok singers. Kabok is a sort of court song. I'm actually translating the whole court song repertoire right now. I'm learning more and more about them. And one thing I'm learning is that they're not such elitist lyrics as the music would make them come off to be. They're actually quite a bit folk songy in their content, although they're delivered in a very elegant way to become court music. So this was a book that was written for kabok singers to understand how to express each of the modes that they're going to perform for the audience. And I don't know how many of you play Western music? Just one, 2, 3. Okay, so everybody familiar with major and minor modes? Yeah, even if you don't play music, you probably know. So major mode is for when you're happy. This is I'm very much simplifying it. Minor mode is for when? Yes, when you're sad. So We have the same thing in Korean music, and of course they don't correspond musically, but emotionally. We have the 병조 and the 우조, and also the 갱년조. So we can think of very, very loosely. We can think of the 우조, 병조 as being major, and the 갱년조 as being minor in terms of emotional content. That's all. So this is from 1762. So I want to go through the main modes with you, and then at the same time we're going through the modes, I'm going to talk about rhythmic modes. So what we're going to talk about today for the rest of the time is a sanjo. Sanjo is the sort of main instrumental style that's used for all of the Korean instruments. So this is going to help you with every single instrument, every single performance you go to. You can keep this in mind for any performance. Of Sanjo, and Sanjo developed around the mid-18th century and was really in its heyday in the 19th century, early 20th century, and now we still have people teaching, but it's sort of dying away as an art form. But it forms the fundamental basis of everything we do as players. So, and Sanjo means scatter. San means 여러 가지 흩든. And this Sando and Jo means the modes. And they can refer to melodic modes, and it can also refer to rhythmic modes. So if any of you are familiar with raga from India, it's put together in a similar way, but it's something different. It's something that's Korean and not Indian. But you can think of it in a similar way. So Sanjo, our main instrumental genre that we play, is put together in a way like Legos. So you have you have the melodic modes, and you have rhythmic modes. So today I'm going to introduce the melodic modes, and at the same time the rhythmic modes, and we'll put them together. We'll hear how they sound by themselves when we get put together, and then after we get through talking about it, we'll play a little concert, and then we'll have a big question and answer time. Okay? So the first mode that Sanjo starts with is called 우조. For those of you who can read Chinese characters, you see it's the character for the wing. This has nothing to do with the meaning of the mode. It's not about a wing. It's just it's part of the name. But because the wing is in the name, we have General Shang Yu showing up because he has a name Shang Yu in Korean. So he shows up, and when you hear 우조, the sound should be transparent and magnificent. And we should think of the General Shang Yu. He's from, I don't know if you've heard of the Battle of the Red Cliff. This is a very famous. We play Chinese games too. It shows up in the games. So he's on his horse shouting at the soldiers to do their thing. And so the sound should be magnificent, a little bit scary. There's very it's very kind of hard opening for a Sando. Next slide, please. Oh, that's a picture of them. So this usually when we start Sando, we start with the slowest rhythmic mode. So the slowest, we can think of the Sando as getting denser and denser and denser as it goes along. So we have a 24 beat, which if you actually try to count it out, there's different ways to think about it. So if you're counting, it's going to be like 18 beats. This is a very long and slow rhythmic pattern. And it's so long and slow that it has 4 seasons inside of it. It has spring, summer, fall, and winter. Very slow. And as we get going into Sanjo, it's not really that it gets so much faster, but it gets denser and denser inside the structure. So I'm going to ask Mr. Jo to play the rhythm pattern by itself, full rhythm pattern, and then I'm going to come in with this 우조 mode, this general yelling at his troops. 우조. So when we were counting 18, right? But you can count, you can put those together into larger units that will get you to 24 eventually. So you get 4 of those 18 counts together, and you get one full rhythm pattern that has the 4 seasons in it. Anyway, that one's a little bit hard to remember, but all the rest of them are going to be easy to remember from now on. Next one. So the next one is Kaemyeonjo. This is the very kind of ubiquitous sound that's been banned in North Korea. This is the sort of sobbing sound. And from the Haedong Gayo, you have the story of Wang Zhaojun. Wang Zhaojun is, every Chinese student knows this story, a very famous story. She's one of the 4 famous beauties of China. And you find her all over Korean literature, Korean poetry, Korean lyrics. But nobody knows who she is anymore. So I'm going to tell you who she is in a second. Sounds must be sobbing and sad. In the top you can see the original writing from the book. It's written in classical Chinese. Korean translation. And then you have the English translation below. This is all translated by Sun Bang-song, a famous musicologist here in Korea. So for those of you who don't know the story of Wang Zhaojun. Wang Zhaojun, she was famous, as I said, one of the most famous beauties of China. The famous story about her is that she came into the Han court, Western Han Dynasty. I can't remember the emperor's name. Anyway, she came into the the harem of sorts of the Western Han Dynasty. And at that time, of course, there was no, cell phones. You can't take pictures very easily. And if the emperor had a lot of women working for him. So in order to be considered by the emperor for anything, you had to a portrait artist came and painted your picture. And of course, people are still people. And she is one who decided not to give a bribe to the painter. So the painter put little, blemishes all over her face. So when it came time for the Western Han to make alliances with the Shongnyu up in the north, the emperor had her picture as one of the ugliest women of the harem, and she was the one designated to become the concubine of the Shongnyu prince. Of course, when she showed up in front of the emperor, she turned out to be the most beautiful woman in the court, but she'd already been promised to the Shongnyu, who, according to the old histories, which of course were all written by men of the court, she was sent off to the north. So there's all sorts of poetry about her in China. And this is her moniker. The moniker of all the 4 beauties of China are all kind of sad monikers. One is one I was just writing about yesterday for the translating these Kabul songs from Korea. So one of them was when she looked over the balcony at the goldfish below in the lake, all the goldfish would forget to swim and breathe, and they would die at the bottom of the lake. So in her case, she was on the ass going up north. The wind was blowing. She's a peepaw player, so she played the peepaw on her donkey. The wind was swirling, and the wild geese flying above her were so saddened by this sad picture of her having to leave her home and marry a barbarian that they forgot to flap their wings and they all fell down dead. So her moniker is girl who fells geese. Other monikers are the girls who kill fish, sink the fish. I can't remember the other 2. One of them isn't as sad, but the 3 of them are really sad. Anyway, so when we play the Kaemyeonjo, we have to think of this story. So the Kaemyeonjo, you've heard it, if you've heard any Korean music, you will have heard it. It has this sobbing sound, sort of Oh, that cool. So I'm gonna actually, I've changed it up this morning, my original idea. So this I'm also gonna use the first 진양조, this slow rhythm 진양조로 합시다. So I'm gonna play this in 진양조 so you get the sad feeling the best in the slower rhythm patterns. But it exists all over, even in the fast rhythm patterns as well. Next is 경드름. 경드름 is sort of a branch of the happier modes, of the 음조 and 경드름 is actually I put the structure together before I talked to my teacher about this 경드름, and we're not actually using even 경드름 in our Sando, but when I first learned the Sando, we were with a different teacher. She was calling it 경드름 using 경드름. So 경 is the same 경 as for 경기도, or 북경, 교토, 남경. This is 경 means the capital city. So you have originally this mode developed in the pansori. And pansori, it was usually used to depict characters that came from the north, came from Seoul to Jeollado. So in the case of, for instance, the story of Chunhyang, where she's the daughter of a kiseng, and she's down in Jeollado, and she falls in love with this guy who turns out to be a yangban. And so she's up, he has to go back up to Seoul, but his father gets relocated and he has to go back up to Seoul. But there's a new governor who comes down, and he's an evil guy from Seoul. Because Seoul was evil when they came from Seoul, so it's an evil guy from Seoul. And his whole entourage is, everybody, each, as we know from politics, everybody has their hanger-ons. What do they call their? I forgot the English word. In any case, their court, and. So these guys, the way the Cholanese see the solars is as sort of really stuck up. Really kind of the way they talk. It has to do with the way they talk. It's not this sort of round way of talking from the south. The way I sort of saw it in my own mind was high heels and So in this mode we have this sort of 꺾이는 거. But in Chinese music, if we have the bujang style, it has this kind of 꺾이는 거. This doesn't exist in Korean music, but in this 경드름, we have something like that. So this kind of sounds a little bit like somebody stuck up next to. So this is my photographic depiction of what it might sound like today, the Godminam style. Next to it. So this always comes in all the different sanjo. It always comes in the 중모리 section. So from now on, the rhythm patterns are going to be easy for you to remember because they're almost all until the very end. They're going to be 12-beat rhythm patterns. So always 12 in this 중모리, the accent on the 1 and accent on the 9. So So if we play 중중모리, it sounds like this. 중모리, now we have 중중모리, two jungs and a mori. 중중모리, so it's the same rhythm pattern, but we're getting a little bit denser, so we're getting a little bit faster, speed it up. What's the next slide? So the next, got the slides backwards, I'll have to go backwards in a second. The next mode is 병조. And 평 means just easygoing, placid, like the Pacific Ocean, right? Is the 태평, the great Pacific Ocean, the 태평양, or the 평. And we have here again the 7 strings that Confucius played, or the 5 string in this case. So the 3 epitomes of Confucian virtue in the Chinese classics are Yao, Xun, and Yu. These are 3 early, almost mythical kings. So in the South Fragrance Hall, the Emperor Xun plays a piece releasing people's indignation with his 5-string qin. It sounds must be upright and placid. This is the 7-string. This is the 5-string. It took me a long time to find a 5-string version. It's only 7-string on the internet. So this is what the 5 strings of it looks like. This is the Japanese. I wanted to include this is for another class, but the 평조 in Japanese, they have 평조 as well. It's called hirajoshi. And if you hear the Japanese version, it sounds something like this. Japanese tuning for 평조. So you can hear it's got a minor sound. And here there's no minor sound. So I wanted to sort of point out to students that these ideas of what is sad and what is happy is very much culturally constructed. 주로 해주시겠어요? 또 하나. 네, 감사합니다. So now we're going to do 중중모리 with 평조. 잠깐만 생각해야 돼요. So this is 중중모리. This is the difference between major and minor mostly. This is 개면조 and 평조. 조금 더 높아. 개면조. You can hear the difference, but I'm just going to point it out. Okay, next. 국거리. Right, now you've got all the three modes in your head. Basically two modes, major and minor. 평조 is sort of a part of, and so is 평조금 and 평조 are sort of part of 우조. So, 국거리, 굿. You've all heard this word 굿 before, yeah? 굿. This is a shamanic ceremony. So, 국거리 is the dance of the shamans. But it's starting to get more exciting as we go along in the music. 국거리 also has 12 beats, but it doesn't have an accent on the 9. But it's quite There's two kinds of 국거리. 그게 경기도 국거리하고 전라도 국거리 있어요. So this has difference of different accents and drumming styles too. 경기도 this is the 경기도 style of 국거리. So this is where we are right now, 경기 style, and then the southern style 전라도 국거리 어떻게 합니까? The same rhythm pattern. When I talk about same rhythm pattern, I mean there's all sorts of variations going on inside, but you can feel that there's a different kind of accent. It's like somebody has an accent and they're speaking to. One is from the north, Seoul style. First one was Seoul style. Second one is 전라남도 style. Okay, next one. 자진모리. We're getting a little faster and faster now. 자진모리, for me, it's the most interesting to play because you have the most sort of dialogue with the drummer here. So we're really fitting inside each other's beats. So it's really fun to play. Also taking the longest time to learn in a good way. So this is same 12 beats again, but we're getting the denser now. Next one, himori is the fastest 장단. And we don't have this 장단 means rhythm pattern. 장 means long, dan means short. So 장단, long and short together means a rhythm pattern. You don't have this in pansori very much. You don't have this in all the Sando, but in the Sando that I played, the kayagum was the first instrument to develop sanjos, and it's the most developed of the sanjos. And our sanjo, longest sanjo is about 75 minutes. So anyway, the other special thing about the sanjo that I play is called the Sando menu. I'll tell you about it a little more later. But my teachers, I studied with the daughter of the oldest daughter of Sangumyeon. Her name is Chi Sangja, and her dad was Chi Young-hee. So Sangumyeon was the first national living treasure in the field of sanjo, and her husband Chi Young-hee was the first national living treasure for Shinawi. So when they got married, he had a really big influence on her. He played drum for her, and he had a really big influence on the sort of style that she played. Sanjo is from Chola province, but he added a lot of kind of Tongi style rhythm patterns, and Himori is also, this Kukbori, for instance, the shaman dance is also from this Tongi area. Himori is also special to kayagum. It used to be special to kayagum sanjo. Now it's developed everywhere else. So this one's, we've still got 12 beats here, but it goes so fast you can't even count it. So if you wanted to count it in calligraphy, you can't even do it in Korean. Or I can't do it in Korean. So we counted in 4 sets of 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3. But the 3 is all inside of that. Everything inside of all the Korean rhythms. In fact, the whole technique to play the kayagum, everything's developed to play everything in 3, not 2 and not 4. So Western music is much, usually 4/4. Same with Chinese music and Japanese music. It's not in 3, which isn't to say there is no 3, but it's not centered on 3. Korean music is all centered on 3. So, but here's a case where we start to sound like 4, even though it's still 3. Climax of the piece, and then the next, I don't know why we have this actually. I've been asking my teacher, I don't have a satisfying answer yet to this, but we have omori, tacked up to the end. Anything you have in Korea that's called od means it's something like off a little bit. So in pansori, you all know what pansori is, right? Am I talking to you? You all live here, right? You've heard of pansori? Does anybody not know what pansori is? Pansori, okay, pansori. Pansori is this kind of story singing, and you just have one drummer, one singer, and they sing in different modes and rhythms, but with language. So there's a content. So it's a very kind of epic kind of story singing. You can sort of, if you look at all the famous books about the Yugoslavian style epic songs. But it's an epic story singing. Before the middle of the 19th century, there was 12 existent 12 songs that were existing. Pansori is kind of like the rap of Korea. It's coming from the street. It's coming out of the, it's not top down, it's bottom up. It's coming from the street. But as the 18th, 19th century it started raising in status as time went on. It was a popular genre. Very kind of scatological humor, dirty jokes. It's full of street humor. And it's very rhythmic and very kind of exciting to listen to. And the story, there's different songs strung together by storytelling in the middle. So different modes, in pansori different modes tend to depict different people. So like in the case of Gyeongderan that I told you about, you have usually when people from Seoul come down, it's usually the evil people who come down from the high class people who come down and ruin the lives of the low class people. And in the case of Onmori is the case usually when some mysterious character arrives in the Pansori story singing. So usually like a monk is coming down off the mountain, and he's in tattered clothes and his hat's kind of ripped up, and he's sort of, he can talk to the Buddha and he can. So this is or a tiger, if a tiger comes out of the mountains. This is Onmori used for this kind of spiritual, but also a little bit strange to the general populace kind of character showing up. So Onmori has a 10-beat rhythm, not a 12-beat rhythm. I don't know if anybody know jazz. Have you heard of Dave Brubeck Quartet? Yeah, take 5. You heard that song yet? Maybe not. Anyway, 네. 아직. So here we have a case where we're missing 2 beats from what is the normal rhythm pattern in Sao. So it sounds a little bit off kilter. So this is how it sounds. 3조, all the contents. Next 뒤로 다시 뒤로 주세요. First of all, are there any questions? I don't know what time it is. 지금 몇 시에요? 8시 반 벌써? Talk too much, sorry. Any questions before we move on? Yeah. I'm going to open it up again for questions, but just about what we just talked about. And then I'm going to formulate. General questions you say for last, but specific questions about either about some of this. To the end bar, okay. This is, I just put some, this was for those who, I didn't know who would be in the audience today, so if there's any, this is just scores. So this is Japanese koto score. You can see it's in 4/4 time if we're just kind of westernized in that way. We have string numbers for notes. This is Chinese gongchi notation. So these are note names instead of string numbers. This is simplified notation, what we study in China today. It's movable do system, so 1 is do, 2 is re, 3 is mi. Dots below is octave down, dots above is the octave above. This is Korean. This is a Western depiction of Korean notation, but you can see it's very philosophical. So these are the note names here. And it all has to do with cosmology. This is finally found this in English. I'm so happy. But it's from China. So these are the names of the notes. The Chinese came up with the Pythagorean, five note system before Pythagorean, before the Greeks did. And they got it by overblowing bamboo tubes. So if you get a bamboo tube, blow on it. For the low, it's like blowing your beer bottle, right? Blow on it. If you overblow it, you get a fifth above. That's how they made the whole system. So you can see this is the note, and then the fifth above, and they all have names on them. Anyway, it's hard to read from there. I just wanted to show it to you. This exists. You can find it on the internet. Here we have the Korean system. So we have, these are the note names here. Hwang is the fundamental pitch. Hwang, then we have, where's the K? Keju, Im, Myung. These are the 5 notes, and they're all related to different things that are principally now. But here you can see it's related to yin and yang, to the whole 이징 from the 이징. So you have these are the hexagrams. 3 solid lines is yang, 3 broken lines is yin. So this is all yin yang system. And these are the notes. So this is the fundamental pitch. He, Jung, Im, Nam. Those are the 5 main pitches, and the rest are in between pitches. So basically, yeah. Just wanted to show you what it looked like, and we're going to explain the whole thing. And we have it in English there. So this is these are also notes to show you how to, from old scores, how to bend a note. Korean score. So these are the notes. These are the rhythm patterns. Is tong, hido, tarararara. And all the song has the same rhythm pattern going to the si and chang. Long life. And these are the note names. Yeah, that's what the old scores look like. Okay. We're going to come back to questions afterwards. Chumse, have you all heard of Chumse? How many of you have been to a Korean concert? Korean music concert, like a Korean music. So have you heard this Chumse before? This yelling out from the audience, yelling out from the drummer to encourage you. So like when I first got here in '92, which is already like 26 years ago, I was really shocked the first time I went to a concert because everybody from the audience was yelling. We were sitting in a Western style theater, the National Theater, and people in the audience started yelling, and I was like, what's going on here? Shh! So the more I understood is that the idea is that everybody sings along together, and when someone does something good, then you encourage them right there in that moment, not after the concert. As they're playing, you say, wow, that was really fantastic. Keep going. Go, girl. That's kind of things. And Chumse means great, super, excellent, exactly. And you'll hear when we play for you that my Mr. Joel will be probably, hopefully encouraging me to play. 선생님, Chumse 어떻게 하면 됩니까? He's going to teach you and you're going to learn, huh? Ready? To be participants?
얼씨구 좋다 얼씨구 좋다
또 보세요.
어이.
오, 잘한다. Good. 영어로 해도
영어로 해도 돼요.
You can do it in English if you want to. So as a player plays, and this is a dying thing. I mean, it used to be really a lot when I was first here. Then it was sort of a lot in Jeollado, but sort of dying in Seoul. And now it's just kind of dying unless you really go to a concert where musicians are in the audience, and then there's a lot of it. And it's always really exciting because it gets the mood up. It's not this quiet classical music thing, but everybody starts yelling. Not really yelling, but shouting encouragement. And then, the player, as a player, it's very exciting for me because I'm like, oh, they like me. You keep going. Because the way Sando works is that it's built like Lego, so you can, if you think they don't like you just cut out the middle and you go to the end. Or, you can expand it or contract it to whatever time you need. So if there's, maybe 20 minutes, usually ask when you get a gig, how long do you want? 20 minutes, 15 minutes, 10 minutes. They're starting to go 5 minutes these days. Like 5 minutes, the shortest really full Sando is 10 minutes, but they're like 3 minutes. Okay, so you have to cut and paste and cut and paste. The longest one is that we have today is 75 minutes. So you take this material and you can put it together in different ways. When you hear shots of encouragement, you feel like playing longer. So this is Chumse. Sanjo. So what we're going to do now is I'm going to perform for you Sanjo. For Sanjo. Mr. Joe is going to play drum accompaniment. And I played the Sangmyeon Ryu, and I became the Chonsuja, the official disciple last year in this school. As a foreigner, I can't move up. It's the highest I can go as a foreigner, but I'm the first foreigner to enter the National Treasure System. Wow. And so we're going to go in the same order. What is almost that on this? Doesn't do that on my computer. So this is the order that we learned today, same order that we learned today, but we don't stop in between, so you have to try to think along. Well, remember that besides the first one and the last two, everything's in 12. This is one of the problems I had. I couldn't figure out like where to get in the groove because I was like kind of 1, 2, 3, 4 when I first got here. So that if you know that you've got to count to 12, then you're going to enjoy the music much more. I think. Okay. 몇 시대? 35분. 짧게. Like short, so I have time for questions. And you can ask both for both of us and I'll translate.
One, two. First of all, thank you for lecture and performance with Mr. Joe. It was very outstanding and insightful.
Thank you.
And concerning questions, I have more like historical question regarding Kayagim history. What was the attitude towards Kayagim during the period of when Korea was colonized by Japan? Because like music is symbol, Kayagim has different patterns, different way to perform. So how it was considered by the government?
Well, there's all sorts of layers to that question, like by whom, right? So, I mean, Koreans tend to blame the death of the Korean music to that period in time. So you have a little bit of a double-edged sword there as well, because a lot of stuff was cataloged by the colonizer. A lot of stuff was, some of the stuff was preserved in a very kind of academic way. If you've read your Said, you know about academia and colonization as well. But in terms of sort of how the general public looks at that time period, we have Japanese is pretty much blamed for the death of Korean music. But at the same time, when I first arrived in Korea, I studied some Korean before I got here, but I went to high school in Japan, so I spoke Japanese much better than I spoke Korean, and I joined to learn Korean rhythms. I joined the National Football Center's night classes. At that time, there was nothing for foreigners, so I joined. It was a bunch of old ladies, and they all spoke in Japanese to each other. So I got into that class by could get along with them because we spoke Japanese. They were all in their 80s at that time. They all must be gone by now, and then I started studying Pyeongchang. Pyeongchang is pansori singing was playing. And my teacher had just come back from 18 years in Japan, so she spoke Japanese. And my teacher now, she was in Japan for 30 years before she came back. So I learned all this stuff by people who spoke Japanese. And when I first started learning, I did it all in Japanese. And now we've all moved over to Korean now. But them too, they just come back, and so they weren't used to speaking Korean either. They're the national treasures. So there's a I think there's a sort of complicated relationship to that time period. The other thing that the Japanese did was bring the recording industry here. So a lot of what we have preserved from that time is through Japanese recording period, Japanese radio broadcast. The radio, if you've ever read Peace Under Heaven, Chimman-shik, it's a great book, and the translation is really good. It's very funny. Chimman-shik's Peace Under Heaven in English. If you read that book, you get a sort of idea for that period. It's about Yangbans, making fun of Yangbans from that period, and it talks about all the radio programs and different contexts, what was going on in Japan, in Korea during the early part of the 20th century.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the nice lecture. And congratulate you for having fallen in love with Korean music after living here. I believe music industry is very, very important element of any given society in terms of culture, and plays much in creation of society value. Like we back in Africa, we have seen music playing a very key role in creating social cohesion, playing a bigger role in unity, and sometimes it activates someone's emotions when you are down. Now, I've never been to any Korean music concert here in Korea. I'd like to hear from you in this modern knowledge kind of society we are having in Korea. Where do you see the future of Korean music to the younger generation?
This is
because
the question, right?
yeah, I believe Korean music is very, very important for a Korean society that is a unitary kind of society. However much people are becoming private life. So this young generation, how are you sustaining it? How are you making this music industry to outlive this era of knowledge and information generation we are having now? Thank you.
This is a really good question. This could be a whole topic for another 2 hours. One of the things that's been happening is that something that's called fusion has sprouted up. Students have been going away from this 12-string Kayagum, away from the Sando. Sando is pretty much dying in Korea right now, I have to say. The Kayagum players have all moved to the 25-string Kayagum, and they're playing pop music, and they're playing new arrangements, stuff with harmony, Western style arrangements. But a lot of people who are doing that also have the old tradition as the background for that. With the younger generation, I don't know, because I think a lot of them are going to be losing this. My teacher's generation is now age 75. And these old teachers, they're ass kickers. I mean, they're really, a lot of tears flow in these, these lessons where everybody gets their fingers called dog dicks and go home and don't come back, and a lot of sort of abuse that goes on in these. And the young people are just saying no. They're walking. No, we're not going to do that. I don't want to be in this situation. So. And the interest has gone away from, because the traditional music isn't part of the sort of hyper modern age of the internet, where everything's on YouTube and everything's sort of moving ahead. If you look at old hip-hop video, you see a lot of inclusion, not a lot, but a certain degree of inclusion of Korean traditional instruments. For instance, so Taeji has using taepyeongso, this sham instrument in their music. You can see other old pop groups that are using pansori stories in their pop music. And even Psy, after he came up with this famous Gangnam Style, he did a project for the Olympics here in Korea. What was it? He did an Olympic project with the National Kubak Center, sort of to promote Korean traditional music and for Psy to promote Korean traditional music. But you see in the video that's produced, you can go on YouTube and find it. Most of the Kubak Center people who are part of the project are sort of cut out, and it becomes a side thing. So Kubak players and people who are trying to make money, they're trying to hitch their wagon to the idea of this Hallyu, the Korean wave, in different ways as a vehicle to sort of hitch your wagon to. But it's not very successful because the Korean government tried to do a top-down sort of counterpoint to the Hallyu. Hallyu is, of course, centered around popular things. So they made Han Style. They have a whole website in 4 different languages to promote Korean traditional culture. The Han, everything with Han in it. So Han, 한국 음식, 한지, 한국음악, everything with Han in it would be that's all been sort of. Some of it's good, some of it's not good. I especially like there's a Tonga Akwe. They have a really nice CD, I think. Sort of, without cutting the roots, is moving forward in time. It's interesting and different than in other countries. It's really Korean and not just a Western thing or from another country. The same question is coming up in China. It's coming up in Japan. It's coming up everywhere in the world, right? Like how do you function? How do you get young people to enjoy this old stuff? And without totally destroying the old thing at the same time. To modernize it. Anybody else?
Can you talk about the connection between the traditional Korean music and shamanism?
Another topic for a seminar. So, if we think about music of any place in the world, a lot of it's connected to belief systems, right, from those places. So if we think about Western classical music, it's really coming out of, there's all sorts of streams that it comes out of, but a lot of it's coming out of from the church music, harmony to talk to God. And if we think about, in Korea, there's really 2 or 3 strains of, it's coming out of ritual, right? The music's coming out of ritual. So ritual, if it's either to the Christian God, or if it's to the gods, or if it's to morality, in the case of Confucian temple and ancestor worship. You have each of these strains in Korea, so there's sort of 3 main streams in Korean music. There's the one that we pretty much have to call Western music Korean by now. It's quite indigenized. And then we have Confucian style music, which is dealing with the court music, stuff for the king, for the court. And there's some Buddhist music in that music, but it's mostly Confucian, this idea of Confucianism, and where there's hierarchy. You saw those notes with that Huang Te. The Huang is the emperor note, so you can't have notes higher than the emperor. There's all this sort of thing that goes with it. But that music is for ritual, especially for ancestor worship kind of ritual music, along with the king. This year is the 600th anniversary of King Sejong, so the National Kubak Center has been having all sorts of year-long things about this, Korean court music and how Korean music, court music, even though it's imported from China in the beginning, how it sort of became indigenized and how it changed here and the ways it changed. But the other kind of music which we just heard is this Sando, Shino is another genre. There's the folk music that's related to the modes and rhythm patterns, but a lot of Buddhist kind of themes in terms of especially different kinds of Buddhist chant and ritual, but also topics for folk songs having to do with Buddhist themes. But the shamanistic music is really prominent and prevalent and running sort of through most of the Korean music. So this rhythm patterns is coming out of shamanic ceremonies. Usually we find in Korea there's two streams of shamanism. One is the kind that's hereditary. The other kind is where you get the shindong, you get a spirit sickness and you become a shaman. But those that have hereditary shamanism, these are mostly becoming the national treasures of Korea. So for instance, Kim Seok-chol of the Pyeongsingut, these a lot of the famous musicians that are coming out of hereditary shamanic. Usually in Korea, the woman is the shaman and the man plays the drum to get the. So, and a lot of the shamanic stories are related to Korean mythology, or they're told in a storytelling form. All this comes together, and this developed only like 200 years ago, but it's coming out of either Pansori or Shinawi. Shinawi is, the word has changed from the way we spell it now. It says Shinawi, but old spelling, we look at the Japanese colonial period, we have Shinawi, so we think it's to call the spirits down for the gods and for us. These are all related. If you go on the internet, you can find all the things, but it's also, each of these questions is all like its own lecture. So I don't know if I need to answer your question. What time is it? We're right over 9. So we can either finish here, or we can learn a song together, or we can, we can come up and say, 선생님 하고 싶은 말이 있어? 지금 다 번역 드렸죠? 하고 싶은 말이 있어요? 없어요? You can ask him a question too if you want to. A question for direct line right there. Not mediated at all for my own experience. That is, that I'm foreigner for sure.
I want to know, it's related with the question mentioned. I want to, very in short, please tell me if the music in shamanism helps them to go in trance. Does it help them to go in trance? Why I mentioned my name? My name is derived from some tribes in Asia, and they use the music to go to kind of spiritual state. But the name is derived from that kind of tradition. And I know in some countries, in some traditions, use music to do the actual experience in spirituality, not just to support not like the song. The song is in the modern Christianity, but they use it. And I just witnessed that in my country. They just use it to contact directly with the spirits.
Yeah, so you find in other shamanic cultures that the drumming is the main instrument. So where I'm from in Alaska, we don't have the drum as an instrument. In shamanism in Korea, even though it's related to Siberian shamanism, in Siberia and Alaska, this whole circle of polar north, the shaman's soul leaves them and they go out into the spirit world. There's various ways they can do that. They talk to the spirits and then come back to their own bodies. In Korea, it's the other way around, that the spirit comes into the shaman. And yes, they're using music to in a way to entertain the spirit or to get the spirit to come into you, and then they're possessed by the spirit, and this gets more and more excited. So in the end of shamanics, not all of them, there are different kinds of shamanic ceremonies, but if we look at sort of the typical ones we can see on movies and the sort of materials that they distribute in English. Again, the general comes into you and you get up on the two blades of the sword and you stand on there and dance. So the music helps to get up the energy and the excitement, while you're possessed, to go up and dance on the blades of the swords. Yes, in the short answer. There's a movie called 사이에서, In Between. That's a movie that explains about the initiation of a young process that someone who gets the shinbyong, the spirit sickness, goes through to either become a shaman or not in the end. And it shows the whole process of, and it also shows various kinds of shaman ceremonies and how they're done. This 이혜경, she's a shaman down in Choladong, and she's quite prominent on the internet. You can find out about her in that movie. Also, there's a little bit about shamanism in the movie Searching for Intangible Treasure number 82. That's also got English subtitles. You can get that movie. Quite an interesting one about an Australian drummer looking for a shaman who inherited his shamanism. His National Living Treasure number 82. It's also a good movie for that topic. Anybody else? Not. Yeah.
It's not a question, but maybe kind of like a request if you could say no to this. Could you have a short song playing a popular song or like a classic Western ballad? If that's
Western song? I'm not trained for that. Western song. What song do you want to hear?
Anything you could play.
Do you have a request? I don't have one in my head.
We have Queen in movies.
Queen. Whoa. Like what would I?
Sorry for putting on the spot.
Queen.
Appreciate it.
How about Arirang? Did you all learn Arirang yet? Did you learn Jindo Arirang? Another movie that you can watch is Seopyeonje. This is a movie about a pansori singer, and there you can learn all about some of the, especially Arirang. I was going to teach you a folk song, but we ran out of time. Unless you want to hang out and sing. Who wants to sing? Anybody wants to go can just go. You want to sing? Okay, whatever, sing. There's too many no's. I don't want to keep you. It's a dark and rainy night. We can all sing Arirang together. Arirang, Arirang, Next time. Thank you for coming. If anybody wants to come up and touch my instrument, don't wipe your nose first before you touch it, but otherwise you're welcome to come. These are silk strings. I probably didn't even say that in the lecture, but they're made out of silk. So you can come take a look for yourself and look at the cello as well. So as you're going, feel free to come up. Otherwise, for those of you who need to go, thank you for coming today.